Hello, everybody. So I will share this beginning of the seminar. I'm Salvatore Anzalone, and with Giulia Filacanapa and Erika Magris, I want to welcome you to this second session of the webinar Robots on the Stage. Today, the session is entitled "The Human Actors Acting Robots, Bodies, Behaviors, Interactions Between Observation and Programming." And we have a rich program. I think it will be really interesting because we will go inside this mix of the cross-fertilization that we want to, we intend to push. We have some lecturers from robotics, from human-computer interaction, and from theater. So we'll engage the aspects, maybe more cognitive aspects of this subject. So the first one, maybe I can start directly by introducing the first person that will talk is Giulio Sandini, so I will not steal too much time to him. Giulio Sandini is from the Italian Institute of Technology. He will give us a talk entitled "Stage and Robotics from Puppet to Social Agents." So, Giulio, if you want to start.
Yes, yes, I can.
You can, yeah, I can stop the share the screen, and you can, please.
Yes. So you should see it. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let me just okay, shape the screen here. So can I start?
Sure, please.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is the title of my talk, and of course, I mean, my first thing is to thanks the organizers, Salvatore, Giulia, and Erika, for the invitation to present my view on these interesting topics, this stage and robotics. So thanks a lot. And then, also thanks to the speakers of the first event. It was to me it was very interesting. All presentations were very nice. Paolo was talking about how science fiction is becoming reality. Today maybe I will talk about some robotic aspects of science fiction, which are really not very much becoming a reality. I still see them quite far away. I enjoyed also, presentation from Andrea Bonarini, and his view of robotics on stage from a point of view of a designer, and also I enjoyed the presentation of Isabella Fruta on showing possible different examples of robots on stage, and some possible evolution from the stage point of view more than for the robotics. So this, this project, I think it is, I like it very much because it addresses issues which are very close to my heart and my current interest. This exploration of otherness. It's related very much to interaction, or the idea of having cohabitation of the animate and the inanimate, which is again calling for human-robot interaction, and this idea of the illusion of life. How can you do that? So from the scientific point of view, I resonate very much from the interest, but also the approach. This interdisciplinarity, as we have seen last week, and we are seeing this week, and it is all based on this question of sociability. Both robotics devices and theatrical practice. So I very deeply share this view, this idea of having HiCAB on stage with humans. I will be talking about during my talk, but also the need to nurture the formation of what I call an extended research community. So this is these are two topics that I will address during my talk, and that resonates very much with the goal of this ArTeC initiative. In fact, exactly for this reason, I am always being very supportive of projects relating performing arts and robotics. And back to the 2013 at ICRA, which is the biggest conference on robotics, I organized with Yoshi Nakamura and Carme Torres a forum, a science forum on robotics meets the humanities, and we had Marcelia Tuna Roja performing on stage, and this was a very first organization of an event in the robotics community. And in 2018 we organized a second round, let's say. This time on stage we had a dancer who was presenting her view of what she called cognitive dancing, along with the presentation of aspects of motor control in humans and robotics. So it is really a very nice parallelism between the two. For theater, it's mainly the question is how to go from a theatrical object to an actor. But for robotics, it is a specular goal that we have. That is how to go from a tool, like a forklift, to a partner. And how can we synthesize this? How can we express this with a few words? And I'm using here a small, short video from a movie made by Paolo Parmigiani called Automata, Movement and States of Consciousness, where there is a very short video clip of a puppeteer, Perry Pearls, which
Giulio, we cannot hear the sound. Maybe
okay, so that's
on the menu.
Well, anyway, I mean, I synthesized here these sentences that is saying, so the main sentence I wanted to present is this. He says that my role as a puppeteer, as a director of actors, as a storyteller, is to tell the audience what the characters are thinking. This I think it is what we really are interested in doing with the human-robot interaction. And the other thing that he says in this presentation, he says we have to create the illusion of thought, of weight, of breathing, and sometimes there is also a little unexpected detail. So we have to create this illusion of thought. And so starting from robotics, a sensible and important question maybe is how far can science alone go? And I mentioned here a sentence from Italo Calvino from his visibility lesson on the 6 memos for the next millennium, which somehow explain why science is really not enough here, because what he says in this sentence is that our imagination cannot be anything but anthropomorphic. So the question here is, I think, it can be rephrased on, how much can we exploit our anthropomorphic imagination to create what Perver was saying, the illusion of life in an artifact. Can we create the illusion of life with passive agents, these automata? In fact, I think it is the mind of the puppeteer that gives consciousness to a marionette or an automaton, transforming them, as Huxley was mentioning, his very, very a nice, you know, and also old book, transforming them into a conscious automata. And in this respect, you know, human-robot interaction, but also, you know, actor on stage, you know, consciousness is the perception of a relationship. You have a relationship with someone, you know, and the key here is the relationship between the puppet and the audience, which is built by the mind of a puppeteer. So there is a mind here that we have to take into consideration, the mind of a puppeteer, you know, with respect to stage, or the mind of the robot, you know. Can robots go beyond marionettes? You know, that's what we have now. Well, they need something of the mind of the puppeteer, maybe not the entire, you know, powerful mind, but something you need there, you know. Can we build what I call, you know, more humane robots who are not able to understand humans? This is the point. Well, I don't think so. Somehow, if you want to have something of the mind of the puppeteer in a robot, the robot has to have some kind of model of humans, you know, a little bit of a model of a human. And in fact, you know, interaction is not only about executing actions. I mean, this is a trivial question, but sometimes I think, particularly in robotics, people is forgetting or is not giving enough importance to the fact that interaction is not only about executing actions, and is also understanding actions by others. And I think that scientific knowledge is still not sufficient to answer the question of how to communicate state of mind, you know, to communicate what the character is thinking. You know, this scientific knowledge is missing there. Why an actor, you know, performing on stage has an implicit knowledge of what this means, you know. So the question that I make, which relates very much to your project, is how can we make actors' knowledge explicit by using robots? So that's the very strong relationship that I see here, you know, to make explicit the knowledge that an actor has when he's performing on stage, to make explicit this knowledge by using robots, so using robots as tool. And this is our approach. You know, we are interested in robotics from the point of view of those interested in understanding, you know, aspects of humanity, aspects of our humanity, and the possible role of robot in society. So it's human and robot, but it's a circle, you know. So it's study humans to build robots, but then use robots to study humans. So it is a virtuous circle in my view, and it is intrinsically multidisciplinary. So so what I'm talking about is a very biased view of robotics, of course, you know, and we are not interested in building these, you know, very realistic copies of humans, you know, but instead to advance knowledge, you know, and technology. And this is not really so understood, I think, you know, in some sense. You know, I work and read a lot about biomimetic models, you know, using robots, you know, that descriptive, what I call descriptive model. You basically describe what the biological body is doing, you know, and you basically ask how it works, you know, this question. I think, you know, we have to go beyond that. You have to study the principles behind, you know, and ask yourself why it works like that. And, you know, maybe in this example, I always show these slides in my talks because I think it is important to understand from the technological point of view if you really want new technologies, you have to find the principles behind, you know, and then you can use different solutions to fly, like in this case. So the focus of what we do is on this triadic relationship, between body and mind of the robot and society somehow. Society can be a human or can be many humans together, and which, in my view, it's again, it's very specular with the idea of a puppeteer, where in this particular case you have a body which is separate from the mind somehow. The mind is the actor itself, and of course there is the audience, and this relationship between body, mind, and society is still in search for an equilibrium in robotics, between the bodyware and the mindware. We have these extreme solutions, a robot which is all body, all strength, and some kind of implementation, like a computer playing chess, which is all mind and no body at all. So the robotics is struggling now with merging embodied intelligence and disembodied intelligence, and merging robotics and artificial intelligence. They are two sides of the same coin, but they are not developing in a sort of an harmonic way. In fact, we have robots are definitely getting closer to us, from manufacturing tools now. With these robots by Roche, Giulio, and by others, they are going on stage, and some of the examples that were also presented last week at this webinar, and the fact that they are getting closer to us, sometimes it looks like we are close to delivering, something, like personal robots or self-driving cars. And scientific communities, and we all have, the scientific communities have contributed certainly to create this illusion, that we will have soon robots among us in the form of personal robots and robot companions. Somehow, the science fiction that Paolo Dario was referring to last week, it is partly true, but it's partly, it has to be considered very, very carefully. Because the reality is that all these systems are failing, in spite of the fact that, you see video clips like the one that you see here, which gives you the idea that the robot is understanding something. It has a relationship with the person, while this is not true. This is just a good artifact of robotics. So the reality, in fact, is that these robots are failing. It's 2 days ago there was this article on the Washington Post on why it will be years before robot butlers take over your household chores, and so the fact, the reality is that the familiarity with today's robots does not promote an attractive relationship. You work with a Roomba, but it's something useful. It's like a washing machine somehow, and I think that there has been somehow a misunderstanding between robots working close to humans and robots working together with humans. That's the confusion that is created sometimes between science fiction and reality. Presenting robots working close to humans as if they were working with humans, which is not true. So, what do personal robots miss to be able to work together with humans, and promote an attractive relationship? Well, they need, what I think we need to do is to reduce this mismatch between acting and understanding, and reduce the limited ability that robots have in reading and interpreting human skills. This is if you look at the failures of personal robots, they mostly come from the fact that the people were expecting the robot to be able to understand more, not necessarily to move better or to sense better. You know, we have you know, the body have progressed a lot, you know, from the 80s to today's, you know, Mark Raibert has been going from hopping robots to machines like this, you know. So the physics of the robotics has certainly improved, while the communication with the technology is still very much on remote controls and pushing buttons or making simple gestures on our cell phone. So we exchange signals, but we don't understand each other. And the result is a fantastic puppet, you know. In this case, I mean, this is a very recent, I mean, you don't hear the music, but if you hear the music, he's dancing, you know, with the music behind. But for it, you know, the music is not even necessary. It's all frozen. It's all pre-recorded. You know, while, you know, if you have a real puppet, you know, the puppet is a way of transmitting the mind of the human to the audience. So in one case, we have a frozen mind. In the other case, we have an engaged mind, which is in fact our target. You know, when I say a more humane, not in terms of similarity of physical body, you know, but a robot able to establish a social relationship, or, you know, evoking associations in the human mind, or a robot you can ascribe intention to according to different definitions, you know. So machines I can relate to, and you know, how can you do that? Well, certainly for a more humane interaction, we need to make explicit the relationship between the body of the actor and the mind of the observer, and this has to be a reciprocal thing. This has to be reciprocal, and you know, to establish this relationship, the added information for us and for a robot on stage is that you need to mediate this relationship with the physical body, you know, with the physical presence of the body. And the presence of a physical body makes a difference in interaction. Is different from watching videos or cinemas, you know, and I think that next talk will concentrate more on this, but I think it is really a key aspect. So we need to study the contribution of the two sides of anthropomorphism. We have been working very much on the anthropomorphism of the body, you know, to giving this body the ability to sense and move like a human, while we need to invest more on this, what I call here the anthropomorphism of the mind. So to think like a human, you know, to relate to an anthropomorphic body. You know, and exploiting definitely the strings between our body and how we interpret the world among us. So is the quintessential of embodiment, you know, the fact that you really need a body there. And what kind of body you need? Well, certainly a robot does not need an anthropomorphic body to act on objects. You know, you can grasp a glass with this balloon filled with coffee beans, you know, which is a very interesting solution for grasping objects. But certainly you need an anthropomorphic mind if you have to imagine the affordances of objects built for humans. You know, a chair is not an object in that respect. The concept of the chair is an action, the action of sitting. That's a chair, you know. And if you stress that even more, an anthropomorphic mind is necessary to imagine the affordances of humans. So a human is something like me. You know, that's a definition of a human, and the concept of a human then is a relationship. And you know, and this brings back an area of science, you know, related to mirror neurons, where I mean, I will not spend too much. I will not spend time on explaining what they are. I'm sure that almost all of you know about these. If not, please go and look at them. But the sentence that I think summarizes the idea is that the better we act, the better we understand. So if we use our body to understand the others, that's embodiment, and how do we exchange our mental state through actions? This goal of Barry Pearls, to transmit what the character are thinking. That's the question. That's the question we are addressing, and then humanoid is an ideal tool to study humans' internal models, and this aspect of social interaction. ICAP is an actor, or can be an actor, and can be an actor through which we investigate the dual role of actions. As far as robotics or human is concerned, you interact to lift weights, or for collaboration. So you really exchange forces between yourself if you are working together, but you also exchange messages. You communicate to each other. To build up a shared goal, to understand intentions and emotion, and these messages can be implicit or can be explicit. That's the other stream of research, which is important to stress. And these messages, if you have a body, can be a lot. From eye movements, hand movements, posture, distance, appearance. So I will not go into the details here, of course, but they are sometimes implicit and sometimes explicit. That can be acted purposely, but we, in some sense, I will explain later, we are more interested in implicit signals, which I have another short video clip from Automata, where there is, Theo Jansen explaining, that his animals are basically stimulating
Giulio, we cannot hear it.
Oh, okay, then forget about that. But basically, what he's saying is that these animals stimulate our feeling of seeing something biological, even if there is nothing, biological there. So there is something there which is related to how we perceive biological movement, which explains how it works on people's mind, and so on one side there is a evolutionary origin of these messages. On the other, there is the something very, very, very cultural. This Burraco theater, where there are three puppeteers moving a body of a puppet. I mean, this is all cultural, very much cultural, even if at the end of the day, if you go and measure, you discover that the movements are very similar to movement and biological movement, but this is a sort of learned. So we have an extreme here. On one side we have biological motion, which makes these dots jumping out as a body walking. It is in our brain, this interpretation of this movement. It is unintentional, and you can make it even more complex, and show. You can see a shape which is shaped by just the movement of the hand. You can see this, and the other important thing is that this biological motion thing, induce imitation even in small kids. So it's built in. somehow it's built in our brain. And so all this aspect makes us understand that we can use the ICAB as a wind tunnel, to study, this principle of social interaction. When they become too complex to be solved only analytically, when science does not have the tools to tell you what is important, then you can resort on some physical devices, and use ICAB. You can use it in two ways. One is a sort of a traditional use of robots. You build a model into the robot to see and to verify theories, and models in the real world, in the physical world. But the other one is to use the robot as a stimulus, to use the robot as an actor, to exchange and interpret social messages, to study the principles by manipulating in a quantitative way how the robot moves, So this is the core of what we do, and it's a team. It's definitely a teamwork. I mean, the main players here are Alessandra Sciuti and Francesco Rea, but as you can see, it's a big group, Gender balanced group, very, very bright. People interested in studying aspects which can be measured using ICAB on stage, and these, the kind of thing we do demonstrate that a body is really necessary. It gives a difference to have a physical body with respect to avatars and other aspects. If not, because you can build and you can study aspects of real interaction where you have a physical interaction and between a human and a robot. They need to synchronize. They need to somehow exchange messages. Like in this case where you can play with the robot moving behavior and make it implicitly affect the way humans perform a task or move. So this is implicit. Is not by controlling the movement of the robot, you implicitly change the movement of the person interacting with the robot. And you give very much importance to the regularities of biological motion, the things that Theo Jansen was mentioning, the moving dots showing a body coming out. So the regularities of biological motion are coming from the matter of which we are made of, our muscles, our eyes, the law of the gravity law, So there are regularities which can be exploited. For example, by controlling the trajectory that you use to lift an object, you can communicate the weight of the object, and this we are very good at interpreting implicitly then. So you can show forces, you can see forces with the eyes, and then this, is something which is acquired at a given age. So it is something learned, but it is also important. Or you can measure how careful an action is performed by measuring some of the parameters of motion. And I'm sure that Tony Camurri later on will tell you a lot more about what you can extract from measuring movements in humans. Or, again, this is motor contagion. So we can, again, implicitly control how a human move by having the movement of the robot changing, so it's a message, one of the implicit messages I was referring to. Or study which movements parameters encode the style of actions. This collaboration we have with the group in Parma, where we are trying to measure which are the important parameters, that distinguish gentle motion from a rude motion. Of course, these are two extreme cases, but we want to to go a little bit more into the details. And of course, the other things that you can work with, exploit gaze for interaction. And I want to stress here, the fact that you need a body. You need a body which reacts and synchronize with a human. So it's not only how the body moves, but also how the system understands and see the others working, So you can infer intentions from them. You can, of course, infer attention and so on and so forth. Or, you can go to more, personalization, trust, comfortability. There are other aspects that the group there, particularly the group led by Alessandra Schutti is working on. So I could go on. There are other examples, to explore these ingredients of social interaction. But I want the last part of my talk, I want to stress the fact that, all these things are effective, all these results show that the approach is effective in modeling, the basic building blocks of social cognition, but they are still very much separated. The things that I have shown you are like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. We need, by assembling these individual intelligence solutions, we are not going to produce an intelligent or adaptive system. It's this Swiss Army knife approach, which I always speak about. This knife could be a good idea. This may be a better one, but it doesn't work. It does not scale. It does not scale. It is necessary to start thinking from an architectural point of view, where each single skill represents the instantiation of one of the architectural processes. I think the important is that we need to address this big picture, and we have some ideas on what this big picture is, and we may even have a theory, which tries to explain everything of this idea. But what I think is important is the structure. You need to have an idea of where you want to put your next piece of the puzzle, where it's going to go, and because if only together, by providing each single piece and having it fit with the piece that someone else is putting in the puzzle, only by this we can incrementally build something which is becoming intelligent. Which, this is the research streams of cognitive architecture is not really new, but I think we have to take it, at least I'm talking about myself. I have to take these more seriously now, more, going a little bit more in depth. And then in order to do that, we need to join forces of all actors interested in studying and contribution to this common picture. It may be a wrong picture, certainly, but at least you have you have a way of checking if the idea that your small piece is important, it really is, and what these small pieces contribute to the overall big picture. So a couple of slides just to tell you that we just started an initiative at IIT, with the idea of addressing exactly this point, trying to use the same approach that we use for the ICAB humanoid to build something together with others and then share the results in this sense. So we started at IIT, but the idea is to try to extend that, as an open community. So as I was saying, I think that the academia need to nurture the formation of this extended community, and this is very important. The role of anthropomorphism and social interaction in building a society evolving in the direction of coexistence of humans and artificial systems, or building a theater stage with the same, evolving in the direction of a coexistence of humans and artificial systems. So not only theatrical tools, but real, actors somehow. And I believe that putting a robot on stage can help to find, the principles that I was referring to at the beginning. To have a robot as an actor, and I hope I have, somehow convinced you that this is really indeed possible using robots. And with this, I thank you for your attention, and I just make some publicity of a very nice book that came out of the group in Genova, talking about modeling human motion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Giulio, for your, as usual, for your inspiring talk, because it was really, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
I don't hear you, Salvatore.
Sorry? Yeah. You don't hear me?
Okay, now I hear you. Okay, that's fine. Yes, thanks.
Okay, maybe it's better. I think I had problems with my earphones. No, Giulio, I just wanted to say thank you for your inspiring talk, as usual, because it was. I was amazed by your point of view on robotics. I don't know if there are some questions in the public. We have some minutes for a few questions.
Okay, sure. Yes, I'm here.
May I?
Andrea, please.
Yeah. Hi. Very nice talk. Thank you. Very inspiring. I agree on many things. But at the very beginning, I had a kind of doubt. Do you need the illusion of life, or would you like to have an illusion of animacy? So we know that a robot is not alive. And so would we like to have something that allows us to study how to interact with an object? Or are we trying to do something that would seem alive with all the consequences that we may imagine?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, of course, this is a very nice question, and you talk about life, and when you talk about life and you talk about intelligence, there are possibilities for many definitions. So the way I use that is not really, let's say, in a strong way. What I think I would like. What I think I would like is an artificial system to show is somehow to stimulate this anthropomorphic imagination that Italo Calvino was referring to, which in this case animacy would be sufficient, just to stimulate this. But then if you add the ability to understand and not only the ability to show movements, then I think you end up in a much more complex definition, which somehow may require to use the Turing test or what I call a behavioral Turing test. If you are interacting with a robot, how do you understand if it is teleoperated or if it is autonomous? So this, I think, would be the illusion of life. If the robot would be autonomous at that stage, that would be the illusion of life. But it is an illusion. You know that it is not a biological system, but in that sense, it is important. So, in summary, what I say is that maybe we are at this stage now. We are more addressing the issue of animacy, but the long-term goal really would be to see if we can build a system which gives the illusion of life. But the only reason why we are interested in this is because we are interested in understanding humans, not necessarily in building an autonomous robot. I think this is going to be very far away. So this is the part that I don't agree very much with Paolo Dario on the fact that science fiction is becoming a reality. It will take a lot of time.
May I pose a question?
Yeah, sure, please, Antonio.
Thank you. So thank you, Giulio, for the very inspiring, as usual, when I listen to your presentation. Thank you very much. I just, I wonder about the need for anthropomorphism that you mentioned, discussion about anthropomorphic body, anthropomorphic mind. It came to my mind Mimmo Cuticchio, who is a famous puppeteer, just as also a gift to our Sicily friends. Mimmo Cuticchio is very famous and did a very interesting artistic project with Virgilio Sieni, who is a famous choreographer. And it is a theater piece called Nudità, in which there is Mimmo Cuticchio on stage with a great talent in moving a puppet made of a few pieces of wood, and with a human dancer all together. And the couple becomes something that is alive, and the robot, even with such a poor anthropomorphic shape, is really powerful in expression. And another example that comes to my mind, and so I pose the question, is about the work on the living architectures of Philip Beasley. So to like simulating, as you mentioned, just biological life. In this case, can be a forest or can be the leaves of trees, and they move and have some kind of human behavior with visitors of this installation. There will be at the Biennale in Venice next in a few months an installation of Philip Beasley. So I wonder, is really a true anthropomorphism in terms of the body or necessary, or you think that let's say an anthropomorphic mind, or just to exploit the human capability to understand animals and the life around us, and the tendency to animacy, as also Andrea mentioned.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think, this anthropomorphic thing, I think it is important to mention. I mean, in one of my first slides, what I presented was, what I said is that we are interested in humans. That's a bias. Okay. So our focus on anthropomorphism is because we are very much interested in understanding how humans are related to each other. So in that sense, I strongly believe that the shape and the body is important. Okay. On the other hand, some of the aspects that are some of the features that we use to communicate are not only humans, and the examples I have shown, particularly the implicit way of communication, is not only human. So you can reduce let's say the physical anthropomorphism by playing with the let's say the movement anthropomorphism somehow. Why a cartoon gives you the impression of being alive, for example, and all these most of these features which are implicit are basically, as I was very briefly mentioning, related to the physics of our own body. I mean, gaze is important because our retina is space invariant. Space is space variant, so we have to move the eyes to look at the details in the scene, and this is an open window to our mind for someone interacting with us. but this is what I want to stress here is that this feature, for example, this social message did not develop as a social message. It developed because there was some evolutionary advantage in having eyes like this, and now we are exploiting this feature. And the same is for the muscles. The biological movements as characteristics which all animals with elastic muscles have, from chickens to humans. So anthropomorphism is important to me if you want to build a model of human. The fact that I learn, when I learn to act, I can see my body, and my body is anthropomorphic, helps me understanding the movements of other anthropomorphic bodies. Is the same representation, this idea of mirror neurons. So depending upon the question you are asking, anthropomorphism is more or less important, but it's an open question. Sorry, it was a long reply.
If I may add something along this line, we started on the opposite way. So we started like Walt Disney people from the sack, from the pillow, try to understand what is the basics of movement that gives you the idea of being biologic. So moving a trash bin, or moving a hanger, or moving a pillow, what is biological in that?
Yes. So this is the reason why we need a community, because you can tackle the same issues from a very different point of view, and all of them are correct.
Well, maybe we will have some time for deeper discussion at the end of the seminar. So if I think we can continue just after. But I have just. But maybe before Erika, before I will leave the microphone to Erika for introducing the next speaker. Since we are talking about communication, I think I would, and you talked about this. I would like to have your point of view on the issues that we have, I think, on related on communication with people outside our field. That there is a distance between what it's sold and what we can really do. Okay, and there is all this hype on deep learning, artificial intelligence, self-driving cars, but actually those things work in specific conditions. But what people listen is that the system actually work. No, that we are almost ready, but I'm not sure about this. So, I'm actually worried about this issue on communication, that maybe could bring to another like winter of AI, like it was like we had before. So, just to say just a few words on this.
So you talk about communication to public in this case.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. This is something I really hate. I think in some cases is because of the language, of course, that we use. Because if a programmer of a robot, looking at a robot standing still, says that now the robot is thinking about what to do. He knows that in this case the word thinking means that is lost in some programming loop, trying to find a solution looping around. If a person who does not know anything about programming hears this question, hears this sentence, it gives it to a totally different meaning. You know, basically the thinking it has a different meaning. So I think we have to be very careful. I mean, when I say we, I say roboticians, you know, people working with technology. We have to be very careful in using words and explaining what we mean by these words. You know, that there is a Jean-Claude Latombe that is working on these aspects, you know, of communication and the fact that different same words have different meaning in different communities. We have to fight that. There is no other way of you know, being very specific and fighting this behavior, because otherwise, you know, people giving money for science will think that some of the problems which are still open have been solved, and this is very bad for research. So, but I mean, meetings like this one are important because there is people can really understand what is the meaning of the words that we are using in different communities, and that is essential. Also to find out that we are basically addressing the same problems. You know, we are interested in the same things, even if we use different language, different words.
Thank you. Erika, the microphone.
Okay, yes. Good morning to everyone. Thanks to Giulio Sandini for the previous talk. And now I'm introducing, it's a pleasure to introduce Gabriele Sofia, who is maître de conférence habilité à diriger des recherches in performing arts. So we are changing our perspective. And he works at Université Grenoble Alpes. And we were really interested in Gabriele's point of view on our start in research, because he was a pioneer, let's say, in the a neuroscientific approach of performing arts. So he extensively worked on the theater and neurosciences. And today is going to talk about the third points of this triangle Giulio Sandini mentioned in his presentation, the spectator, and what is the perception of the spectator, what the spectator understand when he's facing, is looking and theater show, and in particular a theater show with robots. So please, Gabriele, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Giulia. Thank you, Salvatore, to have invited me. I'm really happy to be here because it's a really stimulant, it's really interesting topic, and it's a pleasure for me to share a part of work that I've done with an interdisciplinary project between theater and neuroscientists. I had the opportunity to cooperate with both neuroscientists and cognitive scientists. So the main problem of my research, of my interdisciplinary research, when I started to cooperate with science, it was really simple. It was why a spectator enjoy a performance. And so in that case, the big question, I don't have the hope to solve this question, but I'm here mostly for sharing question with you and not really for give answer. But the main question is why or how a spectator could or could not enjoy a performance with robot or a performance with human plus robot. So in I I would like to present a notion that is the notion of the spectator performative experience. That is the notion that I create to make a difference from between the spectator performative experience, so the experience of the spectator in front of a live performance, and the other kind of spectatorship, like spectator in the cinema, at the television or internet, and so on. So I would like to present that, and then try to make some hypotheses of how this could works with robot. I will try to share the screen so I can show you my PowerPoint. Could you see that? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, okay. The notion of spectator performative experience was born to underline the difference between the spectator who attends a live performance and the other forms of spectatorial experience. The concept, however, also highlights the active performative role that the spectator is required to assume during a performative event. So, in order to describe that, let's see 4 characteristics, 4 points of interest that are useful for the reflection upon the particular cognitive traits of such an experience, which can be defined relational, embodied, predictive, and co-constituting. So let's try to analyze this point in brief. First point, so the relational feature. First and foremost, the spectator is a relational figure and can only be studied in the relationship with the performer. Hence, the need to reject the idea of standard spectator that is capable of providing a more or less reliable model. There are no standard spectator. Each spectator has his own way to perceive it, to organize his experience with the performer. Moreover, one must not forget that very often the spectator plays an active role in the collective dynamics of the public, whose mechanism of emotive contagion have recently become the object of studies in the so-called social neuroscience. Just to give you an example, last year, Vittorio Gallese and his team published an interesting article about the collective enjoyment of live performance. In these experiments, the team shows how the heart rate of spectators attending a live performance tend to synchronize with each other. So spectator performance experience is first of all a relationship. And it is really important, especially today when we speak a lot about online theater or internet theater and so on. We must not forget this feature. A spectator is always a collective experience. So, second feature, embodied. As we all know, the researches on mirror neurons mechanism show a direct connection between perception and motor system. For that reason, it seems almost banal to indicate the spectator's experience as embodied. Each spectator needs the activation of his motor system in order to perceive the performance. One must not forget, however, that defining experience as being embodied by virtue of its motor basis also means considering it as essentially biographical. Our motor system, in fact, is a continuously developing process which is modified and reorganized according to our everyday activities. The model system can thus be considered the depository of our biography, which resonates with the perception of every action. It is precisely for this reason that the same experience of the performance can vary radically from person to person. Eugenio Barba, in this book, Bruciare la Casa, translated in English with the title On Directing and Dramaturgy, wrote, "Every action must resonate inside the biographical caves of any single member of the audience." So it is this image of biographical caves that it seems really clear for me to understand how the biography of each spectator plays a main role in the spectator performative experience. So in theater, each perception of an action engages the totality of our best motor experience, thus bringing us in a more or less conscious way to a veritable activity of choice and reconstruction, to a performative activity. Third point, predictive. One of the reasons given for the presence of mirror mechanism in humans is related to the rapidity in the reaction and the response to a given stimulus. The ability to reach as fast as possible to a stimulus constitutes a mechanism that is fundamental for survival. To this end, our cognitive system is equipped with a considerable amount of predictive mechanisms that include, but are not limited to, the mirror mechanism. The spectator experience is strongly conditioned by such an anticipatory mechanism. The actor plays with the spectator's predictive disposition by creating multiple dynamics of expectation and surprise. Such dynamics are distributed at a different level, from that of the single action to the dramaturgical level of the whole performance, and constitutes one of the sources of pleasure for the spectator's experience. Every instance in a performance, in fact, is lived according to the elaboration of previous moment and the prediction of the consecutive events. In this sense, what we could say that at the cognitive level, there is a certain tendency to regard perceived events as narratives. Such a predisposition is founded upon a predictive mechanism. Although such a mechanism is well known in the dramaturgical level, what might be surprising nowadays is that the similar dynamics are displayed also at the level of a single action. The spectators make an ongoing elaboration of information, physical, postural, kinesthetic, but also dramaturgical data, received up to any given moment so that he or she may predict the direction that could be taken in the next moment of the performance flow. So let's see the fourth feature that is a little bit the most complex, that is co-constituting. I take this concept from Alain Berthoz, the neuroscientist of the Collège de France, who reinterpreted the notion of myth-constitution of the philosopher Husserl. So, co-constitution refers to the idea that our experience of the world also depends on the way in which the other individual interact with the world, and therefore co-constitute the world with us. Let's try to be a little bit more clear. Action and perception are no longer seen as radically distinct functions, but as a process that share common neural substrate, as shown in the research on mirror neurons. Although classical physiology assigned different neural circuits to the process of action and perception, recent studies have shown a direct physiological connection between these two functions, which means that each time we perceive an action, it resonates in our body-mind system that translate the action according to our motor and biographical baggage, our learning system, and our cultural conditioning. So consciousness is not a product of the brain, but emerges from the relationship between one's own body and the environment. The embodied model holds that the way by which we experience and became conscious of the world consists of a circular process between the human being and the environment. Each time we perceive the world, we are actually acting upon it. That is, we are modifying the object that we intend to perceive. In every perceptive act, if every perceptive act modifies the very object of the perception, then there is no predetermined world that can be perceived as it is. Instead, the world itself is established and modified by the individual who perceived it. So what we refer to as perception is not a passive process, is not a data collection, but it is the result of a continuous interaction between the individual and the world. Moreover, if we also consider the fact that the environment inhabited by individuals is usually constituted by the human beings, by other human beings, that would notice that our experience of the world depends also on the way which other individuals interact with the world. The environment, therefore, is not shared, but rather co-constituted by the human beings who inhabit it. I just want to show you an experiment that it made that, I think, more clear and more easy to understand. It is an experiment of made by the Marcello Costantini and his team at the University of Teramo in 2010, if I'm right. So it was really simple. There were some images, there were a subject and this subject in front of a computer just see some image. For example, they showed the first image, the first on the left. The subject sees a table and the cup with the handle on the right side. So they showed that simply looking to this image, there is an activation of the right arm of the subject, an activation of the muscles of the right arm of the subject. Also, if the subject doesn't move, also if the subject is still without moving, there is deactivation of this right arm. Why? That's really simple, because we perceive the cup inside our reaching space. And so we simulate the most direct action that we can do in this setting. And so the most direct action is grasp the cup on his right side because the handle is on the right. When they show the second image that you can say in the lower part, the subject, but the image is really clear. There is the same table, the same setting, but the cup, it's at the other side of the table. So it's perceived as outside our reaching space. And so the subject has no activation of the right arm. Then what they do, they add a human figure, a humanoid figure in the same setting. So in the first case, the cup is always perceived as inside the reaching space. So the subject has always an activation of the right arm. In the second case, the cup is outside the reaching space of the subject who is looking at the image, but it is inside the reaching space of the human figure that is in the image. So that has been surprising. So the subject who is looking at the image has still an activation of the right arm. Why? Because he is simulating the potential action of the person inside the image. They made another trial, and instead of the human, they put a sort of pillar. And what happened? In the first case, we still have the activation of the right arm. In the second case, we don't have any activation of the right arm, because we perceive that the pillar is not capable of grasping the cup. But they have done also something more. They tried with the same setting of the image with the human figure, but then they put a sort of transparent mirror or transparent screen that make that action impossible for the human figure inside the image. And so they see that for the person who is looking at the image from outside, there is no activation of the right arm, because he perceived that the cup is inside the reaching space of the figure, of the human figure, but the action is impossible. So it doesn't need to anticipate or to simulate that action. So Costantini and his team wrote, overall, our findings indicate that the visual feature of an object may suggest or even demand a motor behavior to the observer, not only when the object is located within her own reaching space, but also when it falls within the reaching space of another individual. Our proposal is that such an effect is likely to be due to mapping of one's own and others' arm reaching space. So what does it mean, really? It means that the perception of the world that we co-constituting with other individual depend also of how the other individual interact with the world. And why it is important for theater? Because in theater, such a mechanism fulfills a particular role if the actor who co-constitutes the theatrical space with the spectator uses extra daily motor routines in the interaction with the theatrical space, then the spectator's experience of the same will necessarily be modified. It is an extra daily experience. In other words, an object that is perceived in a certain manner in everyday life will be perceived in a different manner the moment it is used by an actor. That is, by someone who interacts with the object according to extra daily technique. In the previous interesting talk, Professor Sandini showed a small example of how lifting an object, you can communicate the weight of this object. That is true in a daily life. But if the actor uses an extra daily routine, it is able to give you the experience of that object as more or more light or more or with the biggest weight than the reality. So that is a really basic example to understand that the sharing word with an actor who uses an extra daily techniques can modify our own experience of the world that we are sharing with the actor. So let's try to summarize. If the life experience of an individual emerges from the interaction with the others and with the environment, given that the other individuals that co-constitute the environment are actors, So people who organize themselves differently to the way they do in everyday life. The individual spectator's experience will also be extra daily. Such an experience is fundamentally different from both all the other daily experience and the other spectatorial experience in which the artist does not co-constitute a space with the spectator. So that is regarding, I mean, theater or performing arts with human on the both sides, with human on the with a human spectator and human artist. I just want to make some question for you all about what could happen if on the stage there are robot or robot plus humans. So if on the stage there are only robots, can the spectator performative experience be relational? It's a tricky question because what do we think? What's the meaning? What's the real meaning of relational? It's a really big question. But there is a point that could help it help an answer maybe. When we speak about relation, we can we think of a sort of bidirectional relation, especially in theater. Actor is really always actor has a different technique in order to be aware of how the public, how the spectator is perceiving the performance, not just the applause, not just the laugh, but also the small noise that the spectator can do. There are also a lot of different messages that the spectator can do, they could do in a conscious or non-conscious way to the actor. So in theater, the relation is always a bidirectional relations. Can the robot be aware of the behavior of the spectators? I don't know. This is an open question for you. I discovered in preparing this talk that in the University of Basque Country, there is a team that try to work on that, or that work on how the robot can perceive the message from the spectators. For example, they started with the applause evaluation, and the robot has different reaction according to the kind of applause. It's a really basic. It's really the first step, but it is a step on that direction. So this is really an open question for you all. Maybe you can tell me more about that. Second feature, embodied. Can the spectator's performative experience with the robot on scene can be embodied? On that point, I don't think that there are too many doubts, because there are quite a lot of experiments that shows that we can have an embodied perception of the robot on scene. So I don't think that on that point there are big doubt, but I'm not a specialist, so I will be happy to listen. What do you think? Third point, predictive. Can the robot play with the prediction of the spectator? I don't think so. I don't think so, because it's really difficult also for human beings, and it needs a deep awareness of the attention mechanism. I've been really interested by the development of the joint action with the robot, and I see that there are really big progress in that field. But I don't think that we are close to that. But that's always an open question. Co-constituting. Can the robot make this co-constituting experience with the spectator? I don't think that neither, because I mean, the co-constitution of the world, this effect of co-constitution is linked to the biological motor. The spectator is always seeing the actor and the actress with his or her whole body, almost always. And so this is a question that is really linked with the question that Professor Sandini present before about anthropomorphic and biological motion and so on. So I don't think that we are really close to that, also because co-constitution needs also an awareness of the spectator experience by the robot. On the other side, we can absolutely think that when robots are with human on the stage, we can imagine that the spectator performative experience is relational, because there are humans who can perceive this spectator behavior. It is embodied without doubt. It is predictive also because there is always a human being that can play with the attention of the public, and it is co-constituting. And actually, the example that Professor Camuri cited before of the spectacle Nudità, the Mimmo Cuticchio e Virgilio Seni, it's a really good example, because the action of the performer on scene, the two performers, the dancer and the puppeteer Mimmo Cuticchio, may make it possible to see this puppet as a living object, exactly because their extra daily routine make us a different perception of the world that we are sharing with the spectator, with the artist. So just to conclude, I think that I don't have any doubt about the cooperation between human and robot on scene, and there are more important performances that shows practically that it is possible to create this spectator performative experience. I have some doubt, but I would like to share this doubt with you about a performance with robot only. But the fact that the robot are not able to generate this spectator performative experience to the spectator is not a problem. I mean, they could create another kind of spectatorship, another kind of spectator experience that could maybe be better. Who knows? And so I don't think that it could be a big problem. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gabriele, for this very challenging, in some way, talk, which gives us which open many direction of the reflection, and which resonates a lot with the previous talk of today and of the previous session. We can have 10 minutes of questions about this specific talk before making a short break of 10 minutes again. So I don't know if there are some questions in the audience, or Giulia. Okay, yes. Okay, Giulia, and then Andrea Buonarini, and then Giulio Sandini. Okay, please, Giulia.
Thank you, Gabriele. It's very interesting and inspiring. I just have two questions. One, it's about the project that you talk about. You have said that you made an international project with different partners, and I imagine that in that context you use some type of, I don't know if you use 3D video or camera, or if you use some neuron motion capture, but I'd like to understand how you quantify and study the reaction of the audience, because I collaborate with a team in Hungary where they try to do the same thing, but the problem that we had in that project, that we had only 15 people that we can monitoring, no more. So for me, the number of the people that look a show, it's important. Why? Because how to say Henri Bergson, that is a philosopher and study the laughter, he say that the laugh, it's something that it's contagious. And so all the audience, and you say the same thing, because at the beginning you talk about that first thing that is the relation. But in my mind, I thought for the laugher, I understand the principle. And you think that for the other emotion, the principle is the same. So this is two questions.
Okay, so the first question, I've worked with the Department of Physiology of Action of Sapienza University of Rome and with Professor Mirabella, but we didn't work on Spectator. We work on actors. We try to understand how theater training modified embodied cognition of the actor. And so we made some experiment on the embodied language of the actor, and we have seen some difference. I mean, the dynamic of embodied language in actors. When I say actor, I say actors and dancer and performer and so on. But in them there are some difference in the reaction, in the speed of the reaction of this embodied language system. Of course, there are really small experiment that for me they were useful, not so much for the results, but to understand the method, because in order to understand the scientific papers, I needed to understand somehow what are the method and the criteria that lead someone to make an experiment. And but regarding the audience studies, I worked a lot also with Corinne Yola. And Corinne Yola, that now is working at the University of Aberdeen, University in Scotland. It's a really interesting researcher because she is a choreographer. She has a practical experience in dance, a professional experience in dance, but she is also a cognitive scientist. And so in this moment, she's the researcher who has done more studies with live performance on the Spectator. They've done. She has done 4 or 5 of this kind of experiments, and there are always a lot of technical problem that does never permit never until now. Maybe in the future it will be possible, but until now the experimental setting is really far from the ecological setting, from the really real life experience of the spectator. But maybe in the future they arrive to achieve that.
Thank you. And there was Professor Bonarini who wanted to ask a question.
Just a small contribution about your first column or your last slide. Just a comment about this kind of things. First of all, I would like to say something like, if you are able to tell me what you expect, maybe I'm able to program it. This is the first point. Then about the relational aspect, if you think about some events that happened in some theatrical representation, I think the first image is the end of the Slava Snow Show, for instance. I don't know if you are aware of that kind of thing. I think that there is a strong reaction from a common reaction from the public to something that happens that is not done by actors, but are done by machines, just machines. Something happens and there is a strong reaction. So I believe that the first point maybe is something that can be taken. And also about predictive, this depends on what the robots are doing on the scene. So if they are behaving in a way that is somehow bringing on, for instance, a theatrical plot, a theatrical situation, I think it's possible to have a prediction also if you have only robots. For the last point, co-constituted, as far as I can understand, maybe we need what Giulio was mentioning before. So we need that the robots can understand. So that the experience that you have mentioned with the now is something that is not the only one. There are other experiences where there was a stand comedian implemented by a now that was playing differently according to the reaction of the public. So that this kind of experiences, but these are just answering mechanically to some very clear cue that comes from the audience. It's a step. This is a kind of level, let's say. Of course, the actor can perceive more from small movements of people, from things, and can work more on this kind of relationship. But again, if we know what we are looking for, we need maybe better perception, we need maybe better knowledge, we need better knowledge about many things. But I think it's not impossible.
Thank you very much. This really there are some really interesting remark, and I'm not a specialist of these fields, so I'm really happy to know that there are this kind of possibility. I just want to say something about your first sentence. Tell me what you are looking for, and I will try to program it. And I heard a lot speaking about illusion of life, illusion of animatics, and so on. But why don't we go out from this idea of illusion and pass to and go towards the idea of stimulation? I mean, theater is not the art of the illusion, it's the art of stimulation. So why don't we think to create some robots or some humanoid, or I don't know, with the aim not to replicate life, but with the idea of how I can stimulate spectator, how this robot can stimulate differently the spectator And so why don't we think of another kind of performance that maybe has nothing to do with dance, with theater and so on, but it will be a performance made by the stimulation that robot can do.
This is on the line that Giulio also was said before. So it's something, if we understand what is the mechanisms that can make people enjoying a representation, which may be not necessarily a tragedy or a comedy, but maybe an artistic representation of any type, we may have on theater this kind of thing. And then we have to decide whether we call it theater or we call it in another way. But if we play it in the theater, this may be a theater. But it's a question, yeah, I agree with you. So the robot can have their own way of making people enjoying a representation, a spectacle.
Absolutely. Really quick. Representation is a really tricky word because it means present and again. So again, it's better to use stimulation, artistic stimulation, instead of artistic.
Yeah, then we have to decide what is theater, but okay, I agree with you.
As Fabrizio Cruciani used to say, theater is what the society name as it theater. Yeah. So I mean, the word is really open. And we have two questions. Giulio Sandini and then Marion Boudier.
Yes, thanks. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for the presentation. I enjoyed it very much. I think I agree almost to everything you said. I mean, this motor biography of this spectator, I think it's very important. And that is also one of the reasons why, in my view, humanoid is important to study this. It is not necessarily the only way to show it, but to study. I think this is important. Now, I just want to add a little bit on the comments that were made by Andrea on this last table you showed, because I agree with it that relational. It's probably given to robotics, to robots. You can have it unless you want to go somehow, when I say beyond real time. So robots are very good now to react to stimuli, without having to well, more or less the way to think about that. So in terms of you can have a relational interaction with a robot. I think I don't agree very much on the predictive thing, because prediction to me is the quintessential ingredient of cognition, and at this time robots do not have the ability to predict what is going to happen. I mean, otherwise we would have solved the Asimov's law. If a robot would be able to anticipate the effects of actions of others, and this, I think, is the border now. It is where we have to work, that's certainly not present at the moment, and then consequently also co-constituting is probably not well, is certainly not present there. So I have a few other things, but I'll stop here because I know time is short. Thanks.
Thank you for that remark.
And Marion Boudier.
Thank you, Erika. Good morning. Sorry, I'm not so fluent in English, so I hope I did not misunderstood the things you tried to explain us. I had a remark about stimulation between robot and spectators. I was thinking about Me Worker from Orisa Hirata in Aratakaru Watashi was the title. It's a play with robots and humans from Orisa Hirata. I've seen it years ago on video in a talk with Orisa Hirata. It was incredible because the empathetic feeling of the audience with the robot was very strong, especially at the end of the play, when one of the two robots was wondering how it was to enjoy a landscape with the sunshine. I mean, the robot was wondering how is it to be a human, to have human feeling. The robot, it's a small robot. It's absolutely not looking like a human. It's a robot by Mitsubishi. But it was sad not to be a human. I mean, and I wanted to say the relation between the audience and the robot depends a lot on dramaturgy. I mean, Hirata wrote a situation and dialogue which provoke identification and an empathic relation. I have no question. It was just
yeah, I completely agree. All the predictive mechanism is shaped also by the dramaturgy of the whole performance. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I'm not saying that it is impossible to have this sort of empathetic mesh with the robots. I just yeah, especially if there are also human on the scene. So I agree with you.
Okay, thank you very much. It would be very interesting to continue, but maybe we can have this discussion at the end of our webinar. We have now maybe 5 minutes of break, and we start then again with Antonio Camurri. So it's fine if we meet here again at 12:03 exactly. Okay. Okay. See
15 minutes.
Yeah. 5.
So
3:12. 4 now. 4:12. Okay.
If Salvo is online, we could do some simulation.
Yeah, sure.
If it works.
Please.
Okay, so may I try to share the screen and to see if there is the audio working? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first.
Okay.
So let's see if the audio is arriving to you.
No, I think you have to enable it. You have to go. You know, you have like a banner somewhere with the controls of the sharing. You have 3 points, like more. And if you click there, you should have something like enable sharing of the computer audio, something like
share
that.
Sound. Yes, share sound.
Okay.
So I try again.
Yeah, we have it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I can leave this or I repeat later.
As you can, as you want. No, I think you have to do it again. Actually, not
later. I repeat after.
Yeah,
okay.
Maybe it's better to check them.
Yes. Thank you, Salvo. Grazie, Salvo.
No, figurati.
Quindi iniziamo tra 5 minuti, quindi 4
Sì,
minuti.
penso ora 3-2, qualcosa del...
Sì. Quindi perché non ho capito bene, quindi alle...
52,
ok.
53, 52, sì.
Sì, io faccio i 51, quindi siamo già quasi.
Scusate, ho sbagliato il mio orologio e segnava male l'ora.
Infatti non si capiva, sì,
No,
alle
segnava 58.
Ah, ok.
Non
per
so
quello
cosa è
che non si è
successo.
capito.
Sì, scusatemi. Segnava male. Adesso sono andata un attimo di là, ho visto l'orologio del forno e ho visto che in realtà non eravamo così drammatici coi tempi. Mi
No.
dispiace, sì, non so perché, cosa è successo.
No.
Scusatemi. Bella che
No,
c'ho-
niente.
quindi adesso chissà quando arriveranno. Ho fatto un disastro. Ok. Mai lasciare a me gestire l'ora, mai.
Ok.
Questo lo sapete adesso. Ma sì, ho proprio, cioè, adesso è giusto, quindi sono io che l'ho visto sbagliato. Cioè, segnava, io l'ho proprio visto 58. Ma è strano.
Guarda, non è successo, non è nulla di grave.
Sì.
Un po' sì, vuol dire che il mio cervello, stiamo parlando di appunto processi cognitivi e quant'altro, proprio è andato.
Sto arrivando.
E il prossimo workshop magari sarà sul tempo, la
Sul
percezione del
sì,
tempo.
No, ma
questa è una bella idea.
la visione, perché cioè, vuol dire che il mio cervello era così convinto che fossimo molto in ritardo che ha cambiato quello che vedeva sull'orologio. Vabbè, insomma.
Ok, mi avvisate voi quando volete iniziare.
Sì, grazie.
Okay, grazie.
Nessuno avrà capito niente. Mamma mia, che disastro. Oh.
Fine. Perhaps can we start again?
Yes, I'm
maybe.
sorry to everybody for my misreading. I don't know what my brain did, frankly. It was 58 in my head. And then I acknowledge that I was wrong looking at another clock. So
No problem.
Sorry. And sorry, Professor Bonarini, because I didn't understand your
no problem. But
remark.
I can understand it. From the cognitive point of view, it's very much interesting because we are agreeing on something that is related, is relative, is not absolute. So this is something that put in evidence what is important for relationships. So it's much easier to have an agreement on
sorry,
relative things than on absolute things.
So we can start that second part of our session with the last speaker, with last speaker of today, the Professor Antonio Camurri, that I'm very happy to hear, because I looking a little bit in internet to find what we do at Casa Paganini. I'm so exciting about what your work. So Professor Camurri is full professor in computer engineer. He works at that magnificent place in Genova, Casa Paganini InfoMus Lab, that is a research center affiliated with the DBRIS of the University of Genova in Italy, and also is part of, of a joint laboratory with the Gaslini Hospital called Arial. He has directed a lot of international projects on influence between science and technology, and the research interest combine science research in human-computer interaction with artistic and humanistic research, and included non-verbal multimodal interactive system. Today, he presents a speech entitled Transdisciplinary Scientific Research in Human-Machine Interaction Inspired by Art. So thank you so much.
So thank you very much for your presentation, and I would thank very much also for inviting and for organizing this very interesting workshop. So I'll try to start to share my screen. I present initially two short videos, very old ones, in which we did some experiments with some simple robots are more than 20 years old, and then I'll do an overview of a more recent work that we are doing. So let's see if it works. Hopefully. Okay. Okay, that should. Okay, I hope you can see the screen. So there are basically these are just two examples of a project that we did about what it's mentioned as transdisciplinary research. The first one is an example from a project that we did for an art exhibition at Palazzo Ducale in Genoa in 1997, and we used a robot, the Pioneer 2 from Stanford Research Institute, and we adopted this robotic platform in studying interaction with the visitors of an art exhibition. Is a contemporary art exhibition in which the robot was at the same time one of the exhibit, since it was dressed by an artist, and also a visitor. So it had a double role, and we developed a model of emotions. And they implemented a model of emotions. So the robot has the task to visit the art exhibition, to do a parcours to the various artworks in the museum, and it received the input from outside. So, for example, if people were creating difficulties to go where it was intending to go according to the plan. So, and the difficulties were positive and negative. So difficulties were negative inputs like sticks, and carrots instead were, so positive stimuli were the fact that a person gave interest, so was close to the robot and following the robot. And so there were some external and internal stimuli, and the robot was changing its way of moving in its very simple way, as you will see. And also the sonification of the museum environment. So the sonic landscape was modified and molded by the emotional state simulated by the robot, and by deformation by mirrors that were a sort of deforming mirrors from the camera input of the robot. So this is I hope you can see and listen. Now it is in a more negative emotional state, let's say, worried that it cannot satisfy its goal. This was a self-organizing network defining its emotional state, and this is the visual output of the robot in several screens on the space. And the sound that you hear was generated by the parameters that were emerging from the emotional state of the robot. Okay, this is a first example that was raising several questions. So how such kind of a very simple, non-anthropomorphic at all robot can, but very simple, but how can be used, for example, to measure the interaction with visitors, and which are the very simple behavioral component, because the robot was changing its way of moving. For example, when it was entering into a very negative state, let's say emotional state, even if it is the wrong word, of course, the robot has not emotion, but it is just a simulation of, you understand what I mean. And it was starting behaving in a autistic way, just moving close to the walls and slow, rather than in a certain joyful when the goals were satisfied and the inputs were given to the emotion simulation model. There was moving tile wagging at a higher speed, and so with very simple modulation of its behavior that were remaining with the task of visiting the various exhibits. And these are a couple of papers. And this is another, is another example of the use of a robot in this. And here it was with Virgilio Sieni in 99 in a performance that we collaborated in Ferrara in 99, in which there was the idea was to have a robot that was it is the same robot but with a power supply on board and a video projector on board. So it was projecting images on the wall that you see in the background of this video. So the robot is the same very simple movement, but the fact that it includes a video projector, its slight and small movement are amplified by projecting the images on the wall on the back of the stage. And there was an interesting relation between Virgilio Sieni and the other dancers of his dance company and the robot, because it was not so disturbing, or it was interesting that there is a human with all the degrees of freedom, the expressivity, and the quality of movements, and a so simple machine with some kind of autonomy. Indeed, in the first part of the performance, the robot was connected to the power plug and was directly controlled by a control computer. So it was manually initial. Then at a certain point, the dancer was disconnecting the robot with this cable. And from that point on, the robot became autonomous. So, and it had a sort of, and the dancer has sensor on the body, and so and these sensors are a sort of sensory system also for the robot, and the robot has a simple sensor, the usual sensor of the Pioneer 2 robot. But it was interesting that there was a sort of dialogue between the robot and the dancer of attraction, following the dancer, rather than avoiding him in case of aggressive movement. Okay, just to show you a short extract. Now has disconnected the robot, and now the robot is autonomous according to the goals and the reaction with the emotional emotion simulation model implemented in the robot. So now the robot wants to follow the dancer, and then it starts a sort of dialogue, because there is a sort of positive relation. And when the robot becomes autonomous, there is also a map of what is happening inside the robot. And you see the projection on the wall of the reaction of the. I'm sorry, the video is very poor, but and here there is an interesting relation between the dancer and the robot. And now the robot wants to escape. Okay, so and this is just to give you two examples of some old projects that were conducted with in collaboration with artists, and are two examples of rather old ones, but are in the guidelines, in the coherent with what our research group is doing since many years, I must say, and that is the cultivated intersection of scientific research, in particular on human-centered computing, and to have the art languages as an important source of inspiration to the computational models and the human-computer interaction. That is, there are topics that are a sort of main path that we are following since many years on human-centered computing, that is non-verbal multimodal interfaces, non-verbal emotional and social interface and systems. So how to convey emotion and the social signals like entrainment in between humans, and how to measure and to model these features. And in this case, there was an early attempt to study how to simulate a sort of analysis by synthesis of this expressive and non-verbal social signals. And we had since the 80s, thanks also to the lessons and the inspiration coming from colleagues at the department at the time, like Piero Morasso, Vincenzo Tagliasco, and Giuseppe Gambardella. There were the professors in the 80s that I had, and that were inspiring me. And from the late 80s, we started to study. I started to investigate, for example, how to study movement, exploiting also the Laban effort theory, or to study movement in terms also of cross-sensory representation. So studying, for example, the musique concrète, Pierre Schaeffer musique concrète, and the development of research guidelines from this field as a source of inspiration to expressive qualities of in movement and in general. So this is the and on the right you can see our research place, which is a monumental building in Genova. It was an ancient convent and previously a villa, a Roman villa, and it is a monumental building that is our laboratory, and this is the main lab room where we can experiment with artists like music ensembles, dancers, and we can do scientific experiment involving artists. Now I change I move to another screen. Just 1 minute. Okay. Okay, so and so this is our research center, and as a part of DBRIS, as was mentioned, and this is the place where we do such kind of research. So we work on studying computational models and develop multimodal systems, so interfaces that measure the movement in terms of movement qualities and social relation given by the interaction of a small group of people. This is the place where we are, and the mission that that I mentioned before. So we have our main interest is to have art as a source of inspiration for scientific technological research on human-centric computing. But also we participated also to artistic project. When the artistic project can be a source of feedback and a way to validate some results from research. For example, these are some examples of this transdisciplinary approach that we, since the beginning of our center, we applied. So we participated to operas, to music theater operas of Luciano Berio at Teatro alla Scala and at Salzburg Festival, in which we developed interactive technologies on stage to measure some behavioral aspect of the singers on stage with different this was for us important to, for example, the second experience was the origin of a software platform that has been the IceWeb software platform that has been that started from this experience of Cronaca del Luogo with Luciano Berio, and that is still a software platform, of course, with redesigned and with different generation, but its origin came from this experience. Or, for example, the tangible acoustic interfaces developed for the on-stage objects for a theater, music theater work of Roberto Doati, composer Roberto Doati for the Biennale in Venice, or museum initiatives, museums projects like the Sala della Musica in the museum dedicated to Enrico Caruso, in which there is the analysis of the nonverbal behavior of small groups in the main room, the music room, in which the people interact with the ancient music recordings of the voice of Caruso in a way that does not, let's say, distract from the fact that the recording of Enrico Caruso are of very poor audio quality, and therefore we designed the experiences, interactive experiences, in which the quality of the audio is not perceived because there is an experience that leads to experience the voice. I can give you more details, but and then there are more recent projects like dance, an ICT project on sensory substitution. So how to, just in a few words, is how to perceive the dance through the auditory channel. So a sort of sensory substitution or sensory augmentation for the normal seeing people, but a blind can perceive the qualities of movement by listening to their transformation into the auditory channel. So to have, for example, a perception of fluidity, of hesitation, of fragility elements. So there is a vocabulary that we developed about mid-level qualities, so derived from both, of course, the biomechanics and the analysis from sensors data, but inspired and informed by the vocabulary that comes from the world of dance and choreography, like I mentioned, the effort theory, but also we worked a couple of years during the dance project with Virgilio Sieni, and we crossed our vocabulary of expressive qualities with his vocabulary called the Atlante del Gesto. And this was another example of source of inspiration to detect which are the important expressive qualities and how to try to model them to learn. And we have data sets of not only of description, but also of performance. So to have the possibility to study in concrete with one or more people, and to study also entrainment, both intrapersonal and interpersonal. And here we can have Okay, yes, there is a sort of analysis of movement qualities of a single individual and of a group. So social interaction and social emotion is an aspect that we studied, and the Siempre project, for example, was using the small music ensemble like string quartets. We worked with several famous string quartets, Quartetto di Cremona and others, in order to understand when a music ensemble becomes a single organism, and in that case, it has a big influence on an audience. So we studied this aspect and tried to understand when there is such a phenomenon that is an entrainment and of the string of the music ensemble, and to compare and to understand when. What is that explain the phenomenon of that, for example, helps to distinguish a cold from a warm, engaging performance. And for example, we did experiments in which we substitute the music score of between two musicians. And since they are world level artists, they can play the music, but the performance become cold because each one is concentrated on himself. Otherwise, when they are at their best, they becomes a single organism. And so these are aspects that we studied, and in this project, the Siempre project, we had the pleasure to work with the group of Luciano Fadiga of the Italian Institute of Technology, and we developed we did some joint work, and we had also application of the computational models and the algorithm and the software systems in our software platform used also in interactive setups like this one, or this one that was asked and requested by the European Commission during the celebration of the Treaty of Rome in 2017. In which we collaborated with Virgilio Sieni and his dancer, in which we had a performance involving also classical painting. And here there are several aspects that several exploitation of research. This is, for example, a research on the creation of active music experience. So you use the smartphone instead of being closed in your bubble. You have to listen. You can listen music only if you collaborate with others. So the study on interpersonal synchronization and therefore on entrainment between persons is used to have a more social experience, active experience of music. And this was another European project we coordinated. Then the direction in which this research also is active is on some project with the augmented rehabilitation lab with the Gaslini Children's Hospital. So there is a new unit of the hospital. There is the upside down hospital unit in which the objective is to have children at a more let's say in an hospital with all their problems. So they have the goal to put the world in a correct way, because they are entering the hospital when the world is upside down, when the things are bad, and so is the upside down. And so is an experience-centric approach to design this unit, and then also collaboration in hospital apartment project. And in the current European project that I'm coordinating, a FET Proactive project, in which the Gaslini Children's Hospital is participating with a concrete scenario on healing and everyday life support for them. In another occasion, we exploited the measure of emotions that can be used in a human-robot interaction, but we, in this sense, we developed in such a way to design XR games and serious games to help autistic children, high functioning, in age of 8 to 10, so very specific with games in which the system shows a short video, very 5 to 7 seconds, and then the child has to understand which emotion is expressing, and then has to express the same emotion once he gets the emotion, has to express with her own body the same emotion, and the computer has to recognize. So it's a game in which the child interact with the computer, and in terms of training and teaching the emotions by means of the body behavior. So and here there are two publications in which we also explored with a group of psychologists and with the population of autistic children of this type about the effect of such XR games. And another is on dealing with the recovery of chronic pain, so interacting with I would say that referring to what to the fascinating presentation of Giulio this morning, the aspect on interacting with the robot. What is a robot? Is anthropomorphic? Is physical? In this example, there is. I don't know if I can mention a sort of robot or avatar, but it is only auditory. So it is in the case when a person has a chronic pain disease, that means that the brain is, after a long period of an injury or of a pain, the pain becomes with the problem at the level of the neurons of the brain. And so you have to disconnect because the cause is not anymore present in the body, but the brain feels the pain. So what we developed with the University College London Hospital and the UCLIC Center with Nadia Berthoz, we developed the measurement of fluidity and hesitation in movement and translate into a sort of interaction with an auditory agent in which the distraction of the person toward the auditory stimulus rather than on the proprioception of the movement help in recovery from the pain. And okay, I think that I'm using too much time, but this is just our place where we have a motion capture and multimodal recording platform in order to have experiments possible, simulation of concerts, simulation of dance performance in a really, let's say, ecological or real world setting that does not the emotional and the aspect. And this is there is this infrastructure based on IceWeb that has been adopted, and these are some of the projects that I mentioned are European projects that we participated in some cases as a role of coordinators, and here you have some links to other. To a YouTube channel with some example and a very bad web page. We have no resources to do a very a reasonable web page, but some content is available as well. And this is instead the web page of the Proactive FET project on entainment that I'm coordinating, in which there is also the group of Italian Institute of Technology, again involved, of Luciano Fadiga, Alessandro D'Ausilio, involved, in which we are doing collaborations in this sense. Okay, so I think I can stop. I can stop here. Okay. I don't know how to stop the sharing, but anyway.
At the top of your screen.
You have the green button.
Yeah.
The green button, yes,
Yeah.
but it says how to share. It asked me to share.
Try to click on escape somewhere. Maybe it's full screen, so you don't.
Okay, well, anyway.
Salvatore, I think that you can do that also.
See?
Stop share. Okay, I found it. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for listening, and pleased to answer questions.
Thank you very much, really. For me, it's impressed how many projects you've done in Casa Paganini, really. So I think that perhaps someone has some question. If someone wants to ask something in particular.
Maybe I can, because we saw all these technologies that you used, both for capturing data and also like robots for interacting with people, with robots, avatar, etc. But do you think it's possible in some way to make these technologies accessible to the people, to directly to the artist? I mean, because I feel that sometimes, I mean, they need always engineers, and the engineers made a kind of filter between, I mean, it's our job actually. People maybe, I can say it's like they ask us to make things, and then we try to do something in the middle with the things that are possible to do and the requests that are done. But maybe it would be nice to be able to give this technologies, to give the access to this technology directly to the artist. So I don't know if we are at the level of maturity that this can be feasible or not. You mentioned that you use a software IceWeb, but I'm not sure if this kind of tools could be. I mean, if those tools are ready actually or not.
This is a very interesting question. The real question is about how artists and scientists and technology can collaborate, because this is how to shape a team in this sense. Our IceWeb platform, we counted over 20,000 of users around the world, and now we are continuing, and it was re-implemented, of course, along years, but and it was has been used by artists independently, but the real problem is about the relation between the artist and the scientist and technologist. So yes. Usually there is a relation. The artist says, oh, I need this camera, and he wants this like a service, like a lighting service or an audio service. They ask also some interactive sensor because they have in mind something to do. This is the way we are not interested to collaborate, just to have to provide the technology. What is interesting for us is that technology is not just a service, but is a way to explore possible extension of the artistic language. And in the other direction, how these artistic theories can feed the computational framework and the approach. So, for example, to enrich the vocabulary of features that are measured, or how to manage an interactive narration. and therefore not as a service to the artist, but as a joint work. Of course, in our platform, it is done like a sort of Lego building bricks. So you can assemble with a visual language and you can develop your own application using our platform. There is a part that is consolidated and is used autonomously by artists also. And there are parts that are in the state of research, of open research, of exploring. And in this case, we very often, and we have in our team also people that comes from the arts, so and from the humanities. Members of our team, there is a electroacoustic music composer, expert in electronics. There is a sonic designer who developed the sounds of the Renault electric cars. So he is an expert in sonification, on creating sonification, and as an artist. And there is also an expert, one of the scientists comes from the humanities. So he's a teacher, professor in comparative literatures. And he is a way to inform our research and contribute to our scientific research, in which, let's say, comparative literature is something that can be conceived as a multimodality in the non-verbal languages. So his broad knowledge informs our scientific research. So it is a multidisciplinary team that is needed for such kind of project, not to give tools to artists and then they do by their own, because the more I'm convinced that there is the awareness of a multidisciplinary team in which the participants can enter into the garden of the others, and therefore to have a sort of collective design of the artwork. That is at least what we learned, and we are trying to build and to follow in our interaction design.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Andrea Bonarini. So you need to open your sound.
Of course. Thank you. I was curious about the use of robots after your experience with Pioneer, which was very effective for the pioneers. People that knows what is a pioneer know very well what is the possibility, what is possible to do with a pioneer, which is almost nothing. But it was interesting. Have you had other experiences with robots? Are you interested in experience with robots? Since you presented a lot of interesting things, but I didn't notice many robots in that.
Thank you. Well, we are not expert in robotics, so we are happy to collaborate with experts. So with the Pioneer, we used the Safira and we put on the shoulders of the Safira, and we integrated in our platform for analyzing emotion and trying to make a robot move tail wagging or slower or avoiding rather than going according to the behaviors related to the emotions. That was our basic, but we are not roboticists. So, but we are interested because in the multimodal communication, the physical communication and the robot, let's say, and the embodiment is a very important component. We have a collaboration with Philip Beasley that I mentioned about his living architectures. Again, he is not a roboticist, he is an architect and design these kind of environments with spatial materials that also without motors, so they deformate, and this kind of wood forest of strange leaves that moves and reacts to the visitors is quite interesting in this idea of exploration of the embodiment and anthropomorphism. But we are interested in collaborating with experts in robotics in this multidisciplinary approach.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, thank you.
There is some other question, perhaps? And also we can open the discussion, I think, because
maybe
we arrived at the end of our session, so we can really open the discussion. And if you have some remarks, not question, but also remarks, you are welcome, more than welcome.
I think maybe we can start from something that I think emerged in all the presentation. Like in the center, there is the the computational modeling, let's say, of humans. So maybe Antonio, you did a lot of works on this. I don't know if do you want to share with us something that you think that is like, I don't want to say like something that is like difficult, because I think many things are difficult when we try to model the human behavior. But maybe something that you found that is more informative, more essential to capture when we want to have when we want to create this internal representation of the others.
So, well, it is a very very important but broad, very large question. But I can give you just a couple of examples that comes to my mind now. We are now studying relevance. What is relevant in the behavior of the other that you have? So if you use motion capture, you have a huge amount of data coming from all the markers and at a very high sample rate. But what is relevant in movement? For the humans is very let's say natural. Is the human distill this aspect? For example, we are studying computational models derived by the techniques that are available, called exchange point detection, just to measure relevance in time series. So starting from that to develop models in which we try to verify if we are able to simulate the relevance in a dialogue, or for example the aspect on synchronization. So there is a large literature in synchronization to analyze joint actions and to detect, for example, the leadership according to the relation in small groups or in intrapersonal synchronization techniques. So we from event synchronization to recurrent quantification analysis, and recently I have to mention my colleague Gualtiero Volpe, who developed MEX, which is an extension of a technique for multi-class, multi-event event synchronization. And this is a technique that we use to try to measure the synchronization not only of low-level signals like speeds, acceleration, but the synchronization between feature of movement at different levels, and to conceive therefore different class of events and different layers at which they occur. And so to measure the synchronization of events modeled with from our vocabulary, it seems that can give something more informative in terms of the social interaction of the group. We are doing this only among humans, but could be applied also to human-robot interaction. These techniques, but these are just two examples from our current work. We are more in general, we are studying, and this in collaboration also with techniques from machine learning, recent machine learning techniques, the developments about the role of multiple temporal scales. That is the central topic of the FET Proactive project I'm coordinating. So the idea is that motion capture starts from the lowest level temporal scale, so milliseconds. Okay, but in our brain probably is working at with multiple temporal scales in parallel. So the eye is very fast, the hands is quite fast, the trunk is much slower, the breath, the respiration. So there are multiple temporal scales that our brain manage and integrate. So each scaling for the others, and this is used by our brain to have a better capabilities to predict, to anticipatory, and to understand the others. So we are inspired from this just to try to going forward the typical, the standard motion capture technology, which is still inspired by the early 70s Johansson discovery about psychology, that a few dots, a few point lights can evoke and can make understand the movement. But now with cognitive neuroscience theories, we are trying to have novel source of inspiration for a novel generation of movement analysis and prediction. So these are just an example of this, and in this we are collaborating, and in time, and there are several partners that I mentioned IIT, but there is others, of course, including the Qualisys, who is one of the two main players in the motion capture arena.
And thank you very much, because what you say from a theoretical point of view, it's also very important and very interesting. And it's relating about what Sandini posed like a question at the beginning of his speech, when he say how to transmit what a character is thinking. So from my point of view, so from a theatrical point of view, like director of actor, when I work with actor, I try to not only understand what a character thinking, but how transmit how also a character thinking, because from that point of view, there is a book that for me it's like a Bible for that kind of question. It's wrote by Pierre Abraham, and it's called Le Physique au Théâtre. And that book talks about the four typology of character and respiratoire, digestive. So the how we are have an impact in the way where we're thinking. So I work with mask, and so mask permit to make a stylization of character. So a people who is linking to the character of the digestive type, it's different, the composition, the body, it's different. So my question, it's open, and I think that in that project that we open now, this is my focus in, how we can deal with that problem with the robot. Because I try to deal with that when we work in our previous project about avatar and motion capture. So I try to work with the engineer to modelize a different kind of avatar to represent that. And I don't know how to deal with that with the robot. So not to transmit what a character is thinking, but transmit how character thinking. And this is a really open question. And I don't know if someone
I think that a lot is related to movement, actually. So it's a question of having the possibility. So for robots nowadays, there are a lot of limitations, but one of the big limitations is related to movement. They have traditionally they have a kind of movement that is not at all human-like or bio-like, but in some way they have a limitation in the range of possibilities of moving, which is not allowing to express what we would like to express.
Mm.
So what we are using are high acceleration, for instance, high acceleration of different parts of the body, and a strong management of the, for instance, acceleration is important for expression. In my experience, so what we are trying to do. So movement is very much important. Then body, of course, is also important.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you know, it's a difficult question. You see, we are still stuck with the problem of how to transmit what you think, you know, and so really how to transmit it is, you know, how you think is very hard. I mean, I think it's how you think, I think is very much related to the shape of the body more than the, you know, the message you use to transmit. Because I mean, if you have two hands, you think in a different way than if you have a mouth, you know, to grasp objects. So this is we haven't addressed that very much. The way we are trying to overcome the issue is to try to have robots which are complex enough to allow you to experiment on these aspects. So you know, the ICOB is, it has, we try to comment to make it so that we have the important tools to study cognition, and in that sense we have the possibility of experimenting with a very large repertoire of gestures. But what I think is that to me, at least, I mean, maybe, you know, I'm stuck with this question, but the issue here is, you know, if you want the character to be able to understand or just react, you know, robots now are reacting, are stuck to the reaction. They don't go beyond real time, as I was saying. They need to be able to understand and synchronize with the others, but really understand the intentions of others. And that is the question we are addressing now. The collaboration is fundamental to me. I mean, I've been working with neuroscientists for many years, and I know that we, you know, as a technologist, we have to be humble and even, you know, play the role of the technicians. Not necessarily, you know, of course, we are interested in science and in answering questions, scientific questions, but in order to build a group, everybody has to bring its own specialty there. And our specialty is to have robots moving, you know, to program a robot, okay? So a collaboration with someone who doesn't know how to program a robot, but has, you know, ideas, and it's open. We can be the technicians and program the robot if the question is interesting. And so you don't really need to buy a simple robot because you don't know how to program a complex one, because you are stuck. I mean, if the robot is too simple, you cannot address a lot of problems. If you want to test, you know, sophisticated movements or these kind of things, we can help. And that is the reason why I think this interdisciplinarity is important. Not only to share ideas, but also to share, you know, our manual abilities, you know, in every sense.
Much. how Salvatore say in the conversation, please feel free. We can take 5 minutes more to close at 1 o'clock. So.
Maybe I have not a question, but I mean, I was really amazed by the presentation of Gabriele. Because it's interesting to see how the points of view from different, I mean, we are talking about basically the same things from different point of view, and for me it's super cool. I was thinking about how it's possible to computationally model the public. I mean, I was thinking how we can really do it. I mean, if we really want to close the loop, I mean, I know it's difficult, but I was thinking also with current technologies in controlled environment. I mean, how we can, if we want to go beyond the simple experiment you showed us. I don't know. I think maybe the robot with all the technologies and the models that proposed by Antonio. I mean, I think we can find a way to close the loop, but I really think it's difficult. But it's challenging, actually. I think we can do something to close the loop, not just with the actors in the scene, but also with the public. I think this is a super interesting, I say, challenge for us.
Yes.
I think that, for example, we can. It is possible, or it is not so difficult to develop a system that read the eye gaze direction, and so.
But this we have it already.
Yeah, I know that it exists, but so we can maybe imagine a robot that change its movement or modify its movement according to the gaze direction of the spectator. It could be, for example, just a really small and first step in order to make the performance unpredictable, because that is something really important. Performing arts are really special because most of the time they are unpredictable, also for the artist. The artist that is starting a performance know the pattern of the performance, but everything could happen, and the artist is able to welcome the unpredictable and to use the unpredictable in order to make a real effective relationship.
Gabriele, this is the understanding I was referring to. This is a big obstacle. That's you know, in order to be contingent to this situation, you need to be able to understand while you know the main limits now is that robots are more or less reacting. So they already have a model of what is going to happen. They don't understand. So apart from simple synchronization, so that is why I think, you know, you have to put the robot on stage, not only to move but also to understand. That's I think is a limitation today. And I think a very good model, a very good experimental situation I've seen a few times recently is if you have a triad. You have explicitly a human and two robots, for example, because with two robots you can create the illusion that the robots are understanding, so pass and I've seen, I mean, the example I've seen is in Hiroshi Ishiguro's lab.
Yes, I was thinking that.
Yeah, not related to the androids, but to a human interacting with two small robots. And it has a very, very strong potential because in principle, you could play both the actor and the audience with the robot. You know, in a not well, in a realistic situation, not a real situation, but that's one of the things that I think would be interesting in this community to investigate more, maybe to have 3 entities and not only one explicitly. I mean.
And another interesting thing maybe is to consider what an actor actually perceives from the public.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are acting, possibly your senses, most of your senses are dedicated to the action that you have to perform. You are there to perform something. Mm-hmm. Then there is something in background that you can perceive. And this is not at all simple for a robot because we have a limited sensor apparatus, and this is not at all simple to dedicate part of this thing to the audience. But of course, it's what we need if we would like to keep the audience into the relationship and drive the thing. So the robot really acting should be able to speak and talk and participate to the action, being in the scene with the direction of the sensors towards the place where it's expected to be in the scene, but at the same time, maybe listening to what's happening on the back or what's happening around, which requires a special design for a robot, for instance. Maybe something that is increasing the capability of the robot of doing things. Something maybe special, for instance, for the robot. So in the past, we have worked a lot, for instance, with omnidirectional vision. So you may have omnidirectional vision that takes a look to what happens around, and then you may have a special dedicated vision able to do whatever you like for understanding what's happening on the scene. But you may have something in background or a omnidirectional microphone to understand what's around. So this is a possibility that the robot has. You can add things to the robot.
I don't know if we have.
Yeah. Please, sorry.
No, I think that is a really important point, because the most difficult thing for a human being as actor or as actors is that he is going to act and also look to himself to act. I mean, the actor is always ubiquitous. It be in the action, but it also have to think himself has looked from the outside, so as the spectator is looking at him. So for human being, it's a really difficult thing, but for robot, it is possible to look himself and to do and look himself doing something. So I think that there are some potential experience or to do in that direction.
And for me, there is another point that we need to thinking in. I mean the relationship with the time, because when an actor acts, he can stretch the time. He can play with time. And what he says, Sandini, for me, it was very interesting about the two quality of movement of robot. I never seen it. And I think that this is a point that we need to thinking in that relationship with the engineer, because this is something that it's particular in the actor. And if we want that a robot play in a human way, we need to find that relationship with the time. not also with the gesture, but with gesture in the time. And Camuri made an experience about that idea of slow time that I find very fascinating, but perhaps we can need another session to talk about that. But for me, time is important.
I think so.
I think it's time to close our meeting. So I'm trying to give the right information now. So the next session will be on the year, on the 30. No, I'm sorry, 30 of April, and we will in the next two sessions we will emerge in this extra daily environment, which is the stage, and we will explore first one theater creation, one show, which is about kind of science fiction, so a future where robots will be companions to humans, but on stage there are no robots, just humans playing them. So we will have a conversation with the dramaturg of the show, which is who is also a researcher, a scholar in theater studies, and with the actresses who play the robot characters. So see you donc so on the 30th of April. If I'm right, I hope I'm not saying something wrong again. And thank you very much just to our speakers and to their generosity and their openness to dialogue and discussion and confrontation between our different perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Great
Thank you.
thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.